Hey guys, today we have Galvin. Galvin is CEO and founder of Lauretta. Like Galvin work like with the government, work with retail, work with a lot of clients. They work on like computer vision. They work on again, as I mentioned, retail and a lot of stuff. I think you guys like wanna like hear from Galvin himself. Like Galvin, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Abu. I really appreciate you having me here.
Awesome. Like Galvin, I always ask people like the first question, like why, for example, they turned into entrepreneurship. I think you had a background in restoration, if I'm not wrong, and you did management consulting. What made you build like Loretta?
So I think there are two things to it. The first is that so as you mentioned, I started in all of the opposite jobs of entrepreneur. So I spent 5 years in management consulting. I spent another 5 years in banking, the most stable, well-paid, comfortable white-collar job they get. But I think two things. One is that it was partly a family legacy. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My parents separated when I was very young, and my dad was an entrepreneur. I lived with my mother, so I never had it in my upbringing, but I felt I had it in my genes, and so this is something that I promised myself that at some point I will do. The second thing was that I had an aspiration when I was young to be a scientist, a researcher. But my intense impatience, clinically ADHD impatience level, I realized at some point that scientists don't build enough things. A scientist's
Mm.
life is very slow. And I didn't realize that I didn't think of a scientist as a person living in a lab. I thought of a scientist as an inventor. And a person who builds things needs to not just be a person who is in charge of learning about an idea, but a person who gathers a team to bring ideas to life. And that's kind of why I decided that it's time to build a tech company. That's what I did.
Absolutely. Like I came from academia. You directly hit the nail on what's it called that impression in native language. Hit the nail on, like because I come from academia, like and 100%. Like I did research, I did postdoc, and a lot of time like you publish a paper and then like you ask yourself like now what? Like if you don't see it actually on the market, if you're 100% right on this one. Speaking of like kind of building, I think you went to like Techstars, Air Force. I didn't know Techstars Air Force. I was googling it honestly. Like, can you tell me a little bit? I think you won also there. Like, can you tell us your experience and what was about?
Yeah. So in 2020, I applied to the TechStars Air Force Accelerator. So TechStars is an accelerator program. A lot of them are linked to countries. A few of them are sponsored by organizations. And the US Air Force sponsored three cycles, so 30 companies to go to a Techstars accelerator. And we were one of two non-American companies that were selected. One from Singapore, that was an AI company, that was me, and another computer vision, another kind of AR VR company from Ukraine. And we were selected in 2020. And a big part of that was the acceleration of specific types of technology into the Air Force. In 2020, the Air Force did two things at the same time. One, it was that became the point of time where the US government really tried to go into drone technologies and what they call the autonomous vehicle technologies at scale. And at the same time, it was also a time where the Air Force decided to pioneer a way for small companies to apply and work with the government. So, just to give you a statistic, in 2019, it was something like 100 small businesses was doing research with the government, and in 2021, it had expanded to almost 2,000 companies, and that was a big part of what was happening.
Awesome. Speaking of like, I assume like kind of that's you started Loretta before that. Like, can you tell us more in details about Loretta? Because like I see like you can work well, like you we talked before about retail. We talked about like kind of you worked with the government, with the army, with the military. You mentioned drones. I read also like in some posts and blogs like you guys kind of like also focus on privacy. Kind of a very sensitive topic. You can share whatever you are comfortable with, but can you tell us? in brief what Lauretta do? What do you guys? What kind of clients you work with? And
So Lauretta is like a lady's name, um, right?
yeah,
And
like Mexican or
it's a little bit of a
Spanish.
Mexican name. It's a bit of a Filipino kind of name actually, and it also is translated into the original Greek language as the Lady of Victory. So laurel, like the laurel of the head in the
Mm,
Olympics, right? So, but the reason why we started this company is we had one problem and then we expanded it into a fundamental problem. The precise problem that we started with is that I was running a restaurant chain in between 2013 and 2019. And I was still working in big data in my banking job in the morning. And I'm very fundamentally a data centric person. I think tech people see the world in three different lenses. From the perspective of the user, and that's the people who build very good products. It may not be innovative, but it might be an innovative interaction. There are people who build innovative capabilities, and there are a group of people who see the world from the perspective of data. The availability of new data enables new things. And I think, and I come from that third category. Um, and essentially, what I saw was that in the physical world, there was a fundamental gap in the way that we understand the world. And we don't, what happens is that all physical world analytics in the year 2017, and it's the same in the year 2025, is fundamentally location centric data. That is to say, every shop looks at footfall in terms of number of people who are standing in front of a clothes stand. And that is interesting, but you are not selling to the building. You are using the building to speak to enable the services of the people. And so you shouldn't be analyzing the stand, you should be analyzing the customer. And the way to do that is to understand the behavior and to a deeper extent, the intent of the customer. So essentially, you're trying to kind of get into the head of the customer so that just as you would if you would interview the person, you would not just know what he bought, but the things he was looking for, the things that he saw, the things that led him to buy it, and the things that he is still left wanting, right? And the gap is what you're trying to really close in the physical space. We built Loretta is built around that one question, which is, can we understand the physical human experience? And in doing that, we understand the human intent, the intentions, and the behaviors of people in that space. So by focusing on the experience, it became such that once we built the technology around that, it could work anywhere. And this is kind of how we end up in security and in government and in retail. In every case, there is a person, he has an intent, we understand the intent and we interact and we kind of support that intent. Or we stop you if you're doing something bad.
Like yeah, speaking of when you said intent, like for me, like when again, like for me, like I understand your company, I know exactly like what you guys are building, but for somebody like in our audience, somebody who is not technical, when you hear all
Yeah.
of this, he think of it as face recognition. How you gonna measure this intent without like I think I read somewhere in your website like to save privacy. Like to me, when I hear all what you explained, I'm thinking of China or some kind of, they have tons of camera everywhere. Like you do anything, they just not, they know more than intent before you even probably think of it. How you explain that to like I don't know, like somebody who's skeptical about this stuff, technology and
I,
gathering
I
data?
think the I think the first thing you need to do is you have to be skeptical. I think you should be skeptical, and the skepticism is correct. And one of the reasons for that is that in the physical world, there is a J curve that I always think about in my head when we're building technologies. And the J curve is that on the right side, it is what the customer gives in terms of privacy. So you give your presence as a person. You give your identity as a man, you give your information as a customer, and you give your identity, your biometric identity, right, all the way at the bottom, right? And we look at the J curve, and then in return for that, on the other side, there is your convenience factor, which is like, oh, if I have my login, I do not need to take out my credit card, they can deduct it from my bank account. That's kind of a bit of that on the other side. What we want to do is we want to flatten the curve. And so what essentially that means is that we take as little of your information as possible to do what we do. The first thing to do, and also very fundamentally to the way our company is built, that not only do we not take it, but we make it so that it is impossible to take in the future. That is to say,
Mm.
I cannot one day decide to go back to my videos and then start to facial recognition and identify people. We don't do that. We don't capture any videos. We only process the videos and we discard them. The second thing about our company is that we do no facial recognition. We ensure that facial recognition as a technology does not become a fundamental part of the pipeline, so that it's never there. And at the same time, we still have like 60% of kind of the the kind of like minority report type capabilities, but not linked to you as a person, but linked to the person of interest within the space. And so what I mean by that is in a mall of 500 of okay, so we are running in a mall in Malaysia with 300,000 people who walk through that mall every day. And there is maybe one person who starts a fight. That person, once he has crossed over the boundary of essentially committing a crime, that image of that person gets sent to a specific pipeline where they can choose whether they need to know the identity of the person. Essentially, very similar to if you send a message and you send it to the police, like, hey man, this is something going on, right? That exists. Everybody else, we will never know anything about you. In fact, the way that our system is designed is that if you return back to the mall tomorrow, we cannot connect your journey yesterday to today
Mm.
because the contract of identity and information ends when you walk out of the mall. And we respect that. Very similar to a cookie that actually deletes itself when you leave a website. Unlike, for example, your Google cookie that you will go into your Google Chrome browser and you press it, it's like, this cookie was created like 6 weeks ago. Like, it's been tracking everything. Like, we don't do that. We make sure that the moment you step out, it is gone. And we keep it clean. And I think this is very important in the current world that we have. Because if you see autonomy, if you see pet robots in your house, there's going to be surveillance, there's going to be data capture. And we want to normalize data capture without identity capture.
Mm. Speaking of this, like, since you mentioned about, like, I mean, I get it. Like, that's definitely like good for privacy, but for business wise, like, they want to know more about, like, let's say, for example, retargeting, or know more about kind of like
Yeah,
to bring in the next customers. Because I think last time we were talking about advertisement and e-commerce, and like if I know more and I can kind of, at least I don't need to them in person, but at least to target my next audience or something. How how businesses think of it from that angle, because they also want more data. Like, even though they want to save privacy, but I want to make more money. Because if you kind of sacrifice something, you cut something, maybe you lose something. I don't know. What do you think
yeah.
of that?
No, this is true. So I had a recent conversation with a business that operates in a very privacy-centric nation. Okay, so more than the US and more than Japan, one of those much more privacy-centric nations that really care about it. And I felt this, right? So essentially, they said my government will not allow any form of privacy evasion. However, if we don't know about it, maybe you can do X, you can do Y. It's like that is um that is not what we do. However, there are cases where we do capture identities, and by building a workaround like this, it is very nuanced what happens. So, for example, if 10 people use your computer to go onto Amazon to look for stuff to buy, right? It is true that Amazon knows that by your IP address,
Mm.
there is somebody in this IP address that wants to buy this. Okay? So there is some tracking anonymously tracked to your location. However, on the other side, there is no purchase history unless you logged in. The person who logged in has the purchase history, has the memory carried over to the future transactions on the next time you log in, or you log in from your PC and now you log in from your phone as you're traveling and so on. That we guess they remember that because of your login. What we do is that by separating it out of our system, if a person logs in, you download the Malls app, you scan a QR code. If you go through screening in airports, because obviously we work in airports a lot, or if you show your passport, you have logged in. That information is linked to you. But by doing that, we still preserve the privacy of everyone else around you that did not make that choice. That makes it opt-in tracking, right?
Mm.
And a lot of places and a few countries, such as Singapore, where we came from, they give you implicit opt-in, and we don't like implicit opt-in. Implicit opt-in is a small sign as you walk into a place that says, "By the way, by walking into this place, you have you have agreed to facial recognition." Let's not do that. Let's not do that too much.
Yeah, for sure. What's the challenges? Like, I think, like, I have two questions now. Like, so like there is a challenge in retail regarding retail or this kind of how to scale it. What's the challenges like for that for retail? And the second question is, or like for the military, you don't need to share much details because for me, when I think of military and surveillance and computer vision, I think of Palantir, I think of Anduril. Like they get like a big projects, like, but you are from Singapore in US. I don't know, maybe I don't know, I just want to see what's the challenge to get
Yeah.
contracts, at least. Like, what's the challenge for retail to get, like, say, more clients, and also for military, like.
So retail is the key challenge of retail is that retail needs a lot of education. I think the way
Mm.
to think about it is that there are certain industries that they work in a data-driven manner, even if their data is not good. A good
Mm.
example of that is marketing. Marketing has always tried their best to get data on whether the advertising works. And they know, okay, they know that the AC Nielsen's like survey of 40,000 American households in the suburbs is not very accurate, and they're willing to get better. For companies like that, they have a need, they are pre-educated, and you're filling a gap that they know of. Retail has a different problem.
Mm.
Retail, leasing in particular, which is the key component of retail, the person who rents out the units is the person that makes the money for the building, right? Actually, every other component of a retail space doesn't make money. The only people who make money are those that rent out buildings, rent out shelf space. Okay? And so for those people, the problem that they have is that they have worked so long with absolutely zero data
Mm.
that they have morphed into a non-data centric manner of working. What ends up happening is that in a marketing company, you go to the marketing manager. I can give you clarity on your data in a data-driven way. It will make you look good, etc., straightforward. When you go to leasing, if you go to a leasing manager, you will say, "I'll give you this," and the existence of this thing immediately makes you look bad, even if you were good. And so you have to go to his boss. That's a very messy and very complicated interaction. That's number one. The military question is a little bit more. It's very different. It's very much a cultural situation, and the cultural situation in the U.S. is that Anduril, Palantir for sure, but Anduril maybe is starting to cross into the world of becoming what they call a prime. A prime are essentially these companies that they are almost entirely consulting companies to the government. They manufacture at an extremely high price, and they're kind of wedded into the government in a way where you have to understand the reason why companies like these like government contractors, they can get away with so many things, right?
Mm.
Because they have already given concessions that have created long-term dependencies. A good example of that is that there are many cities in the Midwest, right? Where the only in that city would be like a Raytheon ammunition manufacturing plant. Okay.
Mm.
Raytheon, this company, agreed to build this plant in the middle of this place. And they now provide essentially every good job in that city is a Raytheon job. Every other job there is essentially a farmer, a service person working at the McDonald's, the only fast food there, right? The Panda Express. If it wasn't for that, you work for Raytheon. It's like the mining company in the past. At that point in time, if Raytheon gets threatened, almost 100% that company will vote against whoever threatens Raytheon, right? Suddenly Raytheon literally has a vote that they can move from side to
Mm.
side, no problem. Once you have like 100 of these kind of votes, you start to realize that from a perspective of cities, US election is won on something like 50 cities, right? When you have something like a 48, 52% kind of margin, 4% of the population. It's not a lot. That's 8 million people. That's 50,000 people city. That's 150 cities. If these guys have the power over 50 of these cities, and they have more, they have like 1/3 of the entire important vote of the election is just whatever they say. Suddenly it makes sense that you are overpaid and you're going to war all the time. So a lot of these things kind of are built up. There are now opportunities to do research, but it's quite complicated to work with the US government still. The good thing about the US government is like unlike every other government that we worked on, the US government is aggressively transparent. They try their best to be transparent. And so how that translates out is that you can sue them for everything that they do. It takes forever, it costs a lot of money, but there is tons of bureaucracy. The US government probably the most bureaucratic organization I've ever worked in the entire world. It's not even close. But at the same time, it means that if you understand the path, there are ways to do it. It's weird. One
Mm.
of the ways that I think about it, and this is I think very important for a lot of entrepreneurs. I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs in Singapore who go into trying to get into here, is that the US bureaucracy is probably created by the most brilliant bureaucrats in the entire world. The absolute geniuses at creating a bureaucracy. And the problem is that it creates a very difficult bureaucracy for average people and non-bureaucrats like us. And so it's really something that it's the only time in the world where I needed multiple advisors and supporters just to apply for a project. There is no other place in the world where this makes sense. It's also true, and this is a true statistic, that academic in the US has a lower chance of writing his own proposal and submitting it to a government versus a proposal writing company that doesn't
Mm.
know anything about your product.
It's a lot of work.
So
It's a lot of work.
it's very weird. It's very weird. It shows that there is a bureaucracy that has spawned a bureaucracy-driven industry around it, and it's something that
Mm.
we have to work through. Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely very challenging. When you mentioned, like, for example, like Singaporean, like I want to jump into kind of US market. I think that even in Japan here, I see a lot of entrepreneurs, and like and it's like, entrepreneurs, they want to always, like, follow not just trends, but like they want to catch the opportunities. When we talk about opportunities and trends, what trends are you seeing, like especially with this AI boom? Like probably you were pre the LLMs, like when you started. And now with AI,
Yeah.
everybody like pop up like, okay, cyber security with AI, computer vision with AI. Even it was AI there before, whether it's like
Yeah.
machine learning or whatever, it was already. But definitely the number probably of startups in your field, like they just like slap it as a landing page. What are trends you see it like in the, whether it's computer vision, whether it's like, behavioral and AI? Can you unpack that kind of for me? Because I post a lot about AI, but
Yeah.
that vertical you are in very unique kind of.
So I think what is happening is something called what we call thin AI. Thin, 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 like it's not fat. And what I mean by thin AI is that the service of the company is primarily driven by a single AI capability,
Mm,
or the rest of the company is fairly shallow without this single AI capability, right? And so a really interesting example of that is the first version of Copilot, which was Microsoft's LM coding agent. The first version of Copilot could not read your code.
mm,
It was essentially a pop-up box that popped up ChatGPT inside your coding interface. And everybody who was coding is like, why am I writing to a chat in my coding interface? Usually I just control tab to the Google Chrome browser. And a lot of companies are like that. Those companies, a small number of them will use traction, and a lot of the companies are like this. They will hope that they're first, use the traction to then leverage and build a real product. If you're lucky, you can do that. If you're The problem with that is that it's very risky all the way until you stabilize. I think a good example of that is with the windsurf um,
mm.
business that just happened over the last
Yeah,
72
crazily.
hours, essentially, from now. Um, and yeah, for those who don't know, it got acquired, the acquisition got cancelled, the CEO was hired away, and then essentially everybody else was given
Cognition.
I think nothing essentially. They suddenly disappeared. And the company went from 0 to 3 billion to zero in a period of like something like 45 days.
I don't know if it's
Um,
like to zero, but at least they got 2.4, like between the CEO and the founders and some people. They got some
so
money.
the
Investors also got some money. But
the investors and the CEO, actually only the CEOs were hired away. So
the money
it's
who goes
very
to.
it's a question on whether the investors got money. I don't think that actually landed yet.
Mm,
I mean, you'll probably, obviously, the CEO will, if you get a $2 billion thing, you take the money, you pay off all your investors so that they don't try to kill you, and then that money too, right? But
yeah.
it's complicated. It's complicated. But the thing about it is that Windsurf is a wrapper of VS Code. It's a fork of an open source project, and the difference between the base project and the Windsurf project is only something like 100,000 lines of code. It's not a big modification. And interestingly, I know a person who is building an nearly identical product in Austin, and he's barely funded, right? And it's just like timing and good luck, bad luck, stuff like that. That's just all there is to it. It's very weird.
Yeah.
Um, I think a lot of them will fade away. You will have, um, just like with Facebook, in the world of social media companies, then they will differentiate based on some fundamental decision plus a level of execution, right?
Mm,
Like Facebook's main thing was that it monetized everything that Fenster could do through real IDs, and it was able to scale through universities, and that allowed it to get its basic traction. So there are a couple of things that execution wise that were really smart that allowed them to do that. Um, there will definitely be a couple of companies that will do that. Cursor, I imagine,
mm,
probably has reached its critical mass and will remain a valuable entity, whether it gets acquired or not.
mm.
Um, but in most other cases, they might disappear. Yeah,
Yeah, I think a lot of things going on. Like speaking of like some companies fade, some companies going to win. And this could be like the last question before we do fire shot. Um,
yeah,
what's the future for Loretta? Like, I mean, there's a lot of like things you can do. There's a lot of destruction. There is a lot of billions being spent. Like a lot of people pivoting, a lot of people like, what's the future? And like, if you have any words also you want to say, for example, to potential clients who are watching this, like whether it's like
yeah.
from retail, especially, or any kind of industries that you want to target, you can say like about.
I think that um, the one thing I'll say about the company is that we we operate with the knowledge that this era was coming, and we always operated that way. And so I think there are two types of companies. There are companies that differentiated themselves in such a way that when a flood of companies come, everybody now understands AI, right? But then suddenly you become lost in the mix, and those companies are having a problem now. And there are companies like ours that were constructed in a way to float when the wave comes, right?
Mm,
And the reason why we believe that we are a company that does this is because rather than build a company where we have AI capabilities like, oh, the world's best gun detection algorithm or whatever, we are a system that built fundamental algorithm capabilities or into your future capability, into your future AI. And so rather than work on what I can do, we built a system that allowed us to do every future thing better. And so we are a tick AI system. We're a foundational piece of good AI. The future of Loretta is in that first word that we talked about, which is understanding the human experience. And what that and why and the way to think about that is very simple. Today, AI, you go to ChatGPT, you ask it to generate an image that looks like it came out from YouTube. It generates an image that comes out of YouTube
mm,
because it was trained on YouTube. Right? You also can ask it to generate any kind of text, and it will generate great text because it was also trained on text.
mm,
But what AI does not do today, AI does not understand, it cannot emulate or simulate people in a space. It cannot simulate how people are outside. They cannot simulate how people behave together in buildings, in malls. It cannot recreate. You, by the way, cannot recreate a CCTV image. Like create an image like a CCTV. You cannot. It doesn't work. And why that is important is not that CCTV images are important. Is that CCTV images are the conduit for how cameras understand physical space. And so our algorithms today are actually the strongest algorithms for in building autonomy. And so by understanding how what people are doing and understanding their behaviors, we are right now the strongest algorithm to then tell autonomous vehicles what to do. We want to essentially take all of the frankly horrendous things, horrible things that are happening in the military drone world and make them fluffy and friendly and make it part of the consumer world. We essentially will be the ones that will tell you, will to teach your pet that you are hungry, and so your robot dog can bring you your food. This is essentially what our system is trying to do, and so that's kind of how we want to bring it all back together.
I think I don't know, like weeks ago, like I was watching like I think honestly, like I think the future for Loretta like is definitely, I would say, like in the right direction where it's going. Like I think I was watching Fei Fei Li, what's her name? Hopefully I spell
Yeah,
her name. Fei,
perfectly.
and she was talking about like there is no AGI without like spatial data or like this kind of understanding
Yes,
the physical world. And 100%, I think you guys also like probably also like you have one of the services or data labeling and or data annotation. But I think the future for this like we need more data like regarding behavior, regarding like the 3D world, like regarding like sometimes when I see people talking about AGI or SAI with just training of data on the internet, or I don't know what they are doing, like deep down probably they are trying, like, but what you guys I think building, if you have some kind of collaboration with these kind of big labs, probably like could be
Yeah,
it is a huge market. It is for sure, like
yeah.
um
We think that by the end of next year, roughly 0.1% of the world will walk by a camera running the Lauretta system.
mm,
And that should increase by about 300%, so zero point 0.3 to 1% over the next 2 years. And once you cross about 1 to 2% of the world's activities within the cameras, then you have a very real shot at true AGI.
yeah, for sure. Calvin, like I think we are almost like we have like 5 minutes left. Like this is just like a fire chat, like questions. Like if you can answer like short with yes or no. Like so the first question is like what's your favorite AI tool? Like I mean, I'm sure you use a lot of tools.
I'm still a ChatGPT person.
Chat
Um,
GPT.
I like that a lot. Yeah. I think it was the first thing we used, and then what I realized is that its memory is now is a really useful helper because it remembers the things that I've forgotten.
Yeah. I mean, I use a lot, tons of like vibe coding. I use even like Claude Code and like Cursor,
Mm.
Lovable. I tried many things. Like I think one of the good ways of about AI kind of makes you want to learn more things. The next question, Calvin, like if you could erase one barrier in kind of in AI or kind of in video surveillance, or like what could be like I don't know, is it like bureaucracy, or what could be like for you that can make your life easier, or that is the challenges?
I think the key one is education. I think it is. Um, I think as a company, we are trying to make one of our hopes, one of our visions is that these traditional technology industries, the property managers and all that, do not get swept away by technology, um, and they're not helping themselves. And so
Yeah.
it's something that I wish they would just get it and get with the program because it's going to happen.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Calvin, the last question is what a lesson you wish you'd learned like before this kind of like AI drama going on? Because you've been in the space before. I talked to some founders before, and then when like for example ChatGPT launched, there's a big opportunity. There was no Cursor, there was no Lovable. There's a bunch of companies. They made billions. Like you know, timing is matter. What would be the lesson you wish you learned, or maybe a bet you could have taken? I mean, it's a long journey like business, but I'm just saying like about the timing.
I We moved back and forth between how long term we could look at. So when we first started the business, I think the way that we envisioned the business, at least in 2019, when we envisioned what's going to happen, I think our vision was accurate. And then as time went by, we often had to operate in a very short-sighted manner. Um, and in many cases, being committed to the long-term vision would have been better, even though it was more scary.
Calvin, thank you so much for your time.